Badam, badam, badam. It's time for Daggerheart Beats. That's right. I'm keeping the name. It's mine. It is 8 o'clock in the morning here at Site B, and it is I, your humble but outspoken guide to the tabletop role-playing game world that is affectionately known as the OGGM. It is the 28th day of December 2023. It is kind of overcast, and I'm still under a flood warning. Good morning, and welcome to the final Daggerheart, the Critical Role Year in Review, where we ask ourselves as we look down the precipice towards 2024, which is going to be a very interesting year for our hobby, considering it is the 50th anniversary. The current but former most anticipated tabletop role-playing game of 2024, Daggerheart, from the brilliant minds of Critical Role. But has Daggerheart failed before it even had a chance to succeed? What kind of year did Critical Role have? Were they extremely successful, or did they spread themselves too thin, leading to the highly criticized Candela Obscura and the Campaign 3, which is apparently coming to an end, but people are starting to say it's starting to drag and it's feeling very, very scripted. So before we start to get into it, let's check the numbers by going over to Critical Role Twitch. The last time we were here was 7 days ago, where they did Campaign 3, Episode 81, with 174K views. Then they did the Campaign 3, Episode 81 rebroadcast with 61.9K views. And the Campaign 3, Episode 81 rebroadcast again with 110K views. So in the last 7 days, there has not been a new episode. Meanwhile, going over to the YouTube, the last thing they did was Campaign 3, Episode 81 on the YouTube 2 days ago with 236K views. So it appears the YouTube gets more views than the Twitch thing. Interesting. Okay. Is there any new information on anything on the site? Nope. The site has not been updated since November 19th. Not a good sign. So here's what we know. Candela Obscura, the first supplement for the formerly highly anticipated Illuminated Worlds, hit the market and failed miserably. The numbers speak for itself. Sales-wise, we're not sure, but it doesn't look like it did very well sales-wise. And the reviews, when it finally did hit our hands last month, mostly negative. A few positive, but mostly negative reviews, which leads many to think that Candela Obscura was a failed experiment, and perhaps things that should have been done differently. Not that my opinion matters, but I agree. What I would have done is released the core rules for Illuminated Worlds with 3 campaign settings, similar to GURPS. Your first campaign setting, Candela Obscura. You do the 4-part video series on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube of the Candela Obscura playthrough. Then you do the next world. And let's say the next world would be something either more fantastic or more modern day-ish. Maybe a cyberpunk or a Shadowrun type thing, or just, a film noir or a military thing. Or they do one of the video game licenses that they have the rights to. And you did a 4-part of that. And then you do the example 3rd world in the final port of that. And then Candela Obscura would have been presented to us as the release instead of Illuminated Worlds would have been the release instead of Candela Obscura last month. And Illuminated Worlds would have featured the 3 example campaign settings, which we would have seen during the past year on the broadcast, and perhaps it would have done more successful than an average of 82 to 100K views, which for Critical Role is not very good. Next up, of course, is the multiple card games, video games, and other things that they've done, most of which, again, feels like spreading themselves too thin. And finally, Daggerheart, We had a sneak peek of Daggerheart at PAX, thanks to Bob Wildbuilder. And between that and what we know about it, it's got a lot of interesting ideas, but it does kind of feel like it needs to sort of focus and is trying too hard. And who's texting me? Yeah, ooh, I've got a whatchamacallit? What spam? I'm never getting any good texts. Blah, blah, blah. Stuff happened. We know Daggerheart. We've seen a preview of Daggerheart. Generally, it's not feeling like it's very positive. Now, recently, comicbook.com on the character sheet discussed Critical Role Campaign 3, episodes 80 and 79, and I guess 81. And the fact that the last couple episodes have sort of felt draggy, that they're not really moving the story forward, which is, of course, if you've been following the story, to go to the moon to deal with the threat to all of Exandria and bring to a close the 3-part meta plot that has been part of Campaign 1, Campaign 2, and Campaign 3. They have explored every corner of Exandria, more or less. They're going to the moon, and throughout Campaign 3, we have seen Matt Mercer kill off very large aspects of the Exandria mythology and kill off several of the connections that Exandria has to Dungeons and Dragons, which means, of course, the big speculation from several critters who have contacted me is that Campaign 4 either will be using a new system or Campaign 4 will be a transition where it starts with 5e and transitions over to, most likely, Daggerheart. And then finally, we have them playing Daggerheart. And that is the plan that Mercer has, to release Daggerheart as significant competition to 6th edition 2024 D&D, but after 6th edition 2024 D&D comes out. Which, again, a lot of people are like, hey, it's kind of dragging. The last couple of episodes feel like it's kind of dragging, almost like it's on purpose spreading out the story. Like maybe you planned this. No. Unfortunately, yeah, we know that Daggerheart is still in early playtesting. So what we saw at PAX that Bob showed us and what we will see when and if this thing is ever finished will probably be completely different. Yeah. So is it currently still the most anticipated tabletop role-playing game of 2024? Probably not. Probably MCDM has snuck ahead of it, even though MCDM is not coming out in 2024, which means the most anticipated tabletop role-playing game, at least for the 5e crowd, is Tales for the Valiant, which we'll talk about tomorrow, which leaves us with the big mystery of where things stand now with my neighbors in Calabasas, the cast and crew of Critical Role and the Darrington Press production company, and how the year has treated them. Financially, they kicked ass, right? I mean, they got a television show on Amazon. They've got an upcoming video game. They've got a collectible card game. They've got all the press for Candela Obscura and Illuminated Worlds. Has there been some controversy surrounding them? Yes, of course, especially with the lawsuit and the general pitchforks and torches that go after Critical Role whenever Mercer makes a mistake or something happens on the show that fans don't agree with. They did a Mortal Kombat using their system To the Last Grasp, which kind of was a failure. They did a Persona that nobody apparently saw. They did the what was it? Legend of Zelda, which apparently is now the official. So they've had a good year for side projects, but none of those side projects have really been successful. Meanwhile, the main campaign, Campaign 3, The Story of Bell's Hells, is showing an average of 100 to 200K views, which compared to the, 500, 600, 700K views they were having 2 years ago isn't that great. And again, the main complaint seems to be that campaign 3 kind of feels like it's dragging, and things that could have taken, one session or maybe half of a session have taken 2, 3, 4 sessions, almost as if it's planned. So yeah, what is 2024 going to give for our friends over at Darrington Press? Well, they should probably refocus. They've spread themselves really thin this year, and they need to refocus. I mean, they have made a fucking cookbook, for God's sakes. Focus on the Amazon deal. Get Vox Machina 3 and Mighty 9-1 up and going. Focus on the video game. I don't know, actually, if they need a Critical Role video game. Rather, I think you would just license skins of the Critical Role characters to other video games. Play Talzin in Baldur's Gate with the brand new, licensed crossover thingy. Play Scanlan in Fortnite with the new Scanlan skin and for Fortnite, that kind of thing. Do we need a Vox Machina video game? Do we need a Critical Role collectible card game? Do we need them to keep making these little teeny board games like Princess at Midnight? Or do we need them to focus on Illuminated Worlds and Candela Obscura? Well, they definitely need to pivot off of the disaster, in my humble opinion, that is Candela Obscura. Refocus on here is our take on the GURPS idea of here's a very simple generic system, and then here are the world books for that system. You could use them as source books for Illuminated Worlds, or you could just use them as source books on anything. GURPS has set the standard for that type of mentality, and I think that's what they should follow for Illuminated Worlds, if they're listening. Are you listening? I know you're just over the hill from me. On a clear day, I can see the smog over Calabasas, so yeah. As for Daggerheart, we need to see Daggerheart. We need, every time they do a offshoot one-off, instead of focusing on myths or Candela Obscura, we need to see live playtests of Daggerheart so that they can keep that Daggerheart energy running just in case it doesn't hit the shelves in 2024, which at this point, I'm not sure it will. If you want to remain the most anticipated tabletop role-playing game of 2024, you need to be more active in showing us what's going on in 2024. You need to focus on the good and avoid the controversies, like the lawsuit and the stuff like that. But other than Candela Obscura, they had a pretty good year for them. I mean, they avoided most of the controversy that has plagued them. The Critters' constant hostility towards anything that isn't Critters has kind of died down to a general roar of just, being what they've always been, and leaves us sort of with a, end of the year with kind of looking at Critical Role and Daggerheart and Darrington Press going, you kind of just, you guys are tired. You spread yourself too thin. Maybe it's time to take a break over the winter break and refocus. So in spring 2024, we have a very clear idea of what your plans are regarding to Illuminated Worlds Campaign 3 Daggerheart, and not these like surprise one-shots of Persona. Just focus on Illuminated Worlds, focus on Daggerheart, and focus on bringing Campaign 3 to an end. And then Campaign 4, what it should be, start it with the current system and slowly transition to Daggerheart. So by the middle of Campaign 4, Campaign 4 is going to be 100 episodes, which that's sort of the average, right? Say, Campaign 4, episode 20, we have completely transitioned from the original 5e rule set to Daggerheart. The characters start as 5e characters set in the aftermath of the apocalypse of Exandria, and slowly we see them change as the story turns them into the characters that they will be as Exandria is reborn as a brand new world, but under the Daggerheart rule set with all these new races and magics and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de. That's what I would do. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. That makes the most sense. And generally, it does mostly feel like they know what they're doing. I think this was a big year for them experimenting, and now they've seen what's succeeded and what's failed, so they can get back to focusing on what makes them the most popularity, what avoids them the most controversy, and makes them the most monies. You know it's coming, don't you? And speaking of monies, hey, did you know my content is still sponsored by Kuso Coffee? That's right, I'm still drinking it. Whenever you hear me drinking coffee, that's Kuso Coffee. They've been my only sponsor other than Primetime Sports Camp for the entire year. Use the coupon down below to pick yourself up a sample package of Kuso Coffee. Good enough for the OGGM, good enough for you. You get 10% off by using my coupon, and I make a small percentage. So win, 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 win. That's it for the final Daggerheart beats for 2023. What are your thoughts on our friends over at Darrington Press for this year? Did they succeed? Did they fail? Did they stay focused? Did they spread themselves too thin? Are you excited about Daggerheart? Are you excited about Illuminated Worlds? Are you disappointed in Candela Obscura? Let's face it, pretty much I think everybody is. What do you want to see them do next? Or do you even care? Are you just like, dude, stop fucking talking about Critical Role. Nobody cares. I'm the OGGM. If you appreciate this content, let me know. I will talk to you later. Get off my